Welcome to World History Notes, where I read from the book I wrote to teach homeschoolers world history, a Bible book that looks at world history. It's a survey, it's not deep, but it does give you some basic information. And if you're interested, you can go and dig deeper. You can find my book on Amazon.com, Lulu.com, at the Bible Baptist Bookstore. Just follow me here. So we're in World War One, called the Great War at the time, and want to continue from what I did the other day. So the World War One source book by Philip Haythorne Thwaite says that it is difficult to figure out how many actual casualties there were in this war. Conscription, the draft, distributed deaths over a large cross section of society, as opposed to previous wars in which combat deaths affected a higher percentage of professional soldiers. Also, civilian deaths were much higher than military deaths. A million civilians or more died in Turkey as a result of the massacre by Turkey of Armenian Turks, while only 325,000 are recorded as dying in Turkish military action. Serbia lost around 5,000 troops in action, but 80,000 from disease and 650,000 civilians. Germany is thought to have lost 1.8 million dead, as did Russia, with France losing about 1.3 million and Britain losing about the same. America lost 50,000. Warfare was brutal, with trench warfare accounting not only for a high proportion of combat deaths, but also deaths from disease. Notable battles of the war were the bloodbaths of the Somme and Verdun. World War I was not called that before World War II occurred, but was called the Great War, the war to end all wars, the war to make the world safe for democracy, etc., etc. In 1916, things looked bleak for Britain as German artillery was taking a heavy toll on Britain's soldiers. A brilliant Jew, Chaim Weizmann, invented a formula to rapidly produce TNT, which helped the British in their struggle. Prime Minister David Lloyd George asked Weizmann what he wanted. He requested a national homeland for the Jewish people in Palestine. On November 2nd, 1917, the Balfour Declaration was drawn up by Arthur J. Balfour, the British Foreign Secretary. In 1917, British General Allenby, who was a Christian, entered Jerusalem and took control of Palestine from Turkey. The control of the Holy Land went from a mostly Muslim nation to a mostly Christian nation in one day. Turkey had sought an alliance with Britain in 1911, but had been rejected. If Turkey and Britain had been allied, the birth of the nation of Israel would have been delayed even further. In 1918, a terrible worldwide flu, Spanish influenza, also known as La Grippe, epidemic killed more people than combat, with its death toll being the greatest for a single epidemic since the Black Plague of the Middle Ages. It was a global disaster that killed between 20 million and 40 million people worldwide, with deaths from the war itself being stated by differing authorities as between 20 million and 40 million also, but with the great majority of those not coming from combat. Flu actually lowering the average lifespan by 10 years in America and killing more people in a single year than in 5 years of the medieval plague. Of the American military dead, half succumbed to the flu, not to combat. In all modern wars up to World War II, more people die from disease and infection than die outright in actual combat. The Allied blockade of Germany was slowly strangling their war effort, although their U boat or submarine warfare was wreaking terrible havoc on Allied shipping as well. An armistice was signed on November 11, 1918, 2 days after the Kaiser abdicated. The Peace Conference of 1919 punished Germany severely, and the Treaty of Versailles was the source of much anger later for Adolf Hitler. The centerpiece was Article 231, in which Germany had to accept full responsibility for the war, with harsh reparations being demanded by the victors. Germany was now in a shambles, a defeated yet still angry nation with a long history of militarism. The rule of the czars of Russia was ended by a revolution in 1917. The disaster and military failure of Russia's participation in World War I helped the Bolsheviks, the communists, seize power with Lenin coming out on top. Russia's society and economy, like Germany's, were in a state of collapse. Lenin entered Russia on a train from Germany, whose political leaders felt that supporting his efforts would take Russia out of the war, which it did. For the next 70 years, or Russia, now the Soviet Union, or more formally the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, would be dominated by a corrupted version of Marx's utopian dream society, another form of totalitarianism or government with absolute authority, controlled by the Communist Party elite, who would live like royalty had before the revolution. There was a song, there is a song by a famous rock group from the 1960s that goes like, "Meet the new boss, same as the old boss." And this is appropriate for what happened in Russia. And before we go on to Japan and the Ottoman Empire, the next time we're going to talk about that Russian Revolution. There's some historical background to it that is very interesting that I've learned since I did my book, my textbook. So it will include some things that aren't in this book. I'll talk about that next time for a couple times. Anyway, I thank you for listening, and I hope you'll study world history and come to your own conclusions. I'm not expecting you to agree with me in any way, shape, or form, but I do hope that you'll dig and start looking and learn. Thank you.